Since 1983, FAME has helped business and education work for Maine. Contact the Authority, the Finance Authority of Maine.
Welcome. This is our Afterthoughts segment, seen only on the web. This is where we keep our guests around for a little extra conversation and hopefully some candid discussions that you can only see on the web. Today with us we have Tom Davis. He is the CEO of Skills, Inc. And Tom is also the 2010 Mainebiz Business Leader of the Year Award for the nonprofit categories. Thank you for being here and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Great. We're just going to spend a little more time for folks to see this on the web. We had a good, quick conversation for our on-air program, and I wanted to follow up with just a few more of the things that we were talking about. Just before we started this segment, we were talking about kind of once again about how running the nonprofit is like running any other business, and some of the things that I didn't think about until I started talking to you about it was, I asked you the question, boy, you guys must cover a lot of ground, and you said...
We have 50 plus vehicles on the road.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
So we're in the transportation business as well as the service delivery business.
Right. So how do you balance all that out? I mean, when you're the CEO, you're trying to figure out how do you look for cost savings and really run this corporation and find ways to find the streamlining so the dollars can go back into programs, I guess? Is that what your function is?
If there's any good news in this sort of squeeze environment,
okay,
it's you begin to question everything and look at everything.
Mm-hmm.
When things are good, you might not take apart your organization with a fine-tooth comb.
Mm-hmm.
In this environment, you really need to do that.
Right.
So we look at everything and saying, are we making the best use? Is there something we could change? Could we do something in conjunction with somebody else,
mm-hmm,
which will get us to where we want to go?
And are you finding those kind of collaborative cost-sharing kinds of things out there?
Yeah, over the last couple of years, I think many nonprofits have begun to think differently, that they need to look around for those opportunities, and they're much more open to those discussions.
Mm-hmm.
Because we need to be.
What are examples? Give me some examples.
There's one group I'm involved with. It's 5 organizations. We have met over the last 2 years. We have looked at areas from fuel oil,
mm-hmm,
buying fuel oil as an aggregate, looking at audit, looking at different ways that we could potentially share back office functions, meaning if I were to lose my CFO, would I really need to get another CFO, or could I buy those
mm-hmm
services from one of these other organizations?
Are you finding any strategic advantages from your position? I found some nonprofits, they have a strong back office operation so they can take on work for others and then they use that as a revenue stream.
I think that's right, and I think many organizations excel in certain areas. It's understanding where those opportunities are for your organization, right, and making others aware that you've got that potential and that capability.
Right, right. I got to ask this question. How many other sawmills have you run before you came to this one?
One and done, as they say.
Well, how was that learning experience?
That was the last question I got asked before I got hired for this job. They said, what do you know about running a sawmill? And I said,
and
absolutely
you said,
nothing.
sawmill?
Yeah.
What do you guys do here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was a learn-as-you-go experience.
Yeah.
But fortunately, at the time I came on, which was 11 years ago, it was a very good market for lumber, so I had the luxury of a little time to learn. And I, over time, got smart enough to know I wasn't the guy to run it, and I've hired an expert who does it.
Good. In the profile on you, they were talking about one of the questions, or in the interview, as they were following you around the sawmill, and they talked about the fact that it's a pretty high safety rating there too. No record of serious injuries there, is that a challenge working with a developmentally disabled worker in that environment? Did you have to do anything special?
Sawmills are inherently a dangerous place to be,
right,
but because you're acutely aware of the danger and
yep,
you pay so much attention to it, it's such a high-profile priority. It's interesting. You would think that would be and a serious accident could happen
sure,
in the next 5 seconds.
Sure.
But you pay so much attention, it's highly unlikely that it's going to occur there. It's the places where you think you're safe and you don't pay
mm-hmm,
attention that those accidents tend to happen.
Yeah, right. That's true. Last year, Goodwill Hinckley shut down its core residential service, laid off more than 100 employees, and then you were involved in assembling a group of nonprofit and for-profit leaders to look at that and to try to come up with some recommendations for how they can get back on track. In your Mainebiz profile, you recorded as saying, if these guys can't make it, what's the message there? Boy, what a quote. What is the message there? If Goodwill Hinckley can't make it, how are other nonprofits going to make it, and how are they doing?
Well, let's talk about their resources.
Okay.
They have 100 years of positive service delivery history. They've educated thousands of kids. They've got a huge alumni base. They have a substantial endowment, a beautiful campus, numerous buildings, but the model was no longer supported by the state.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, they were not able to react quickly enough to that shift or pivot in the business model. And it's resulted in the campus now being essentially shut down, and they're trying to figure out a way forward. I think they are emblematic of the struggle that a lot of nonprofits are going through. We've done it this way so long and it's worked. How come it's not working anymore?
Right, right, interesting. And it's not, it's that same model. I mean, one of the other Business Leader of the Year award winners was on our show, It Looks Gourmet Food, and the same kind of thing. He was saying when they took that over, you know, Mike Cody said, I really looked at that as saying, how do we make this change? The people who were running it couldn't see the change. You know, you needed a fresh set of eyes to say, we can't keep doing it the same way. Things have changed. How do we change the way we do business? How do we market it differently? And I think the same is true for nonprofits.
Well, the group we brought in here didn't have a dog in the fight, and that helps. We didn't have any agenda. We just looked at it as a problem to be solved and could make recommendations. We weren't the guys who were going to have to implement them and do the heavy lifting.
Right. So what do you think is going to happen with that?
I think they've got a good shot. Their Strategic Action Committee has developed a real plan. It's making major changes. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think they've committed to a course of action which, if they run the plan as they've designed it, has a very high likelihood of succeeding.
Good, good. You also serve as the chair of the Maine Association of Nonprofits on the board. You clearly have way too much time on your hands. Now, why did you think that was important? Clearly, you have to pick and choose where you want to use your time. Why there?
Well, they're the only nonprofit umbrella organization that embraces the entire sector. So the entire nonprofit community can come under that tent. And one of the weaknesses I've seen in the last 30 years of doing business on and off in the nonprofit community is our inability to speak with one voice. Nonprofits are expert at explaining their individual messages and why they matter, but we're not very good at explaining to people why as a sector we matter. And I thought this was an opportunity to lead that discussion.
And that voice, who needs to hear that unified voice?
Well, I think nonprofits as an aggregate make the difference between a community you want to live in and one you don't want to live in. And I don't think many people think about us that way. So it's the community as a whole we're trying to speak to. We're trying to explain why we matter.
Right. They take a lot of shots from the communities, I think. Well, they're there. Maybe they're not paying taxes, they're tax exempt, those kinds of things, and or competing with private sector businesses. So I think you're right. That has to be clarified, and that must be part of the issue that you're dealing with Maine Association of Nonprofits.
Yeah, over the years I've heard the message there's too many. I've heard the message there's not enough. I've heard the message we need different ones. But part of that lays at our doorstep in our inability to communicate clearly why we are so important to communities.
Interesting. Okay. Kind of final question is, what are your goals for the future, both professionally and personally? Where do you want to take Skills Inc. and where do you want to take Tom Davis?
I'd like to see Skills Inc. Become more and more independent of public funding. We'll never get to zero. Right now we're about 16%. I'd like to see that go to 30, 35 in the next 5 years.
Good.
Personally, I'm enjoying my job. I have a fabulous job. I meet interesting people like yourself.
Great.
I get to talk to lots of nonprofit and for-profit leaders. More of the same would be good.
Yeah, you sound like you enjoy it and you're in a good place to be doing it. That's
I
great.
do.
That's
I
great.
do.
Congratulations again.
My pleasure.
It's great. I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's all. Thanks.